We can see the decline of our society, high crime, crumbling infrastructure and economy, morality in general, and the legacy media gaslights us in true 1984 fashion through all of it. But there is hope. Author Matt Purple is joining us today to offer those glimmers. I'm Kristi Leigh, bringing you the counter narrative. As I said, excited to have Matt Purple standing by. But first, a couple headlines we may want to discuss from Epoch Times. Trump has been briefed on specific Iran threats to assassinate him. Trump's campaign says that the alleged Iranian plot is intended to destabilize the United States and sow chaos. Stephen Chung, the Trump campaign's communications director, said Iranians are terrified of the strength and resolve of President Trump. And even after 2 attempts on his life, Trump is dealing with a potentially compromised Secret Service. I mean, how can they be this negligent if there isn't some kind of purpose to it? Isn't it interesting, though, that we always hear Russia, 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 but nothing about Iran? Iran is reportedly literally trying to kill the GOP candidate, yet you don't see that same hysteria from the media about Iran as you did and you do about Russia. Russia collusion was a hoax. Now we have a verifiable case of a foreign entity trying to interfere in our elections, and you get crickets from the regime media. More election interference comes in developments with America hating George Soros. From the Independent Sentinel, George Soros allowed to fast-track purchase of 200 radio stations. Those radio stations hosting conservatives like Glenn Beck, Dana Loesch, so much more. And this happening all, interestingly, just before an election. Last Wednesday, the commission's 3 Democrats voted in favor of the purchase, of course, while the 2 Republicans voted against it. Soros is tied to many efforts to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. All very mysterious. Watch this.
I think what's interesting about it is that the FCC here is not following its normal process for reviewing a transaction. We have established over a number of years one way in which you can get approval from the FCC when you have in excess of 25% foreign ownership, which this transaction does. And it seems to me that the FCC is poised to create, for the first time, an entirely new shortcut.
Yeah, thank you. As you pointed out here and previously, these proceedings for transfer of ownership have been expedited. What exactly makes this case so deserving of an expedited proceeding so far, from what you could tell?
There is nothing about this transaction that is out of the ordinary. It's the type of thing that we see all the time, and the FCC has a process for this. The full commission itself has never signed off on a shortcut like this. What we usually do is we require people to file a petition with us. We bring in national security agencies. They can review the foreign ownership. It's probably no big deal here, but we review that foreign ownership, and then we vote. Here, they're trying to do something that's never been done before at the commission level.
Wait a minute. A brazen irregard of the law, brazenly just forging ahead with something that's never been done before that can interfere in an election. No, certainly the Dems wouldn't do that. Unfortunately, we're seeing this all of the time. Oh, and looky here. Tim Walz dropped into Soros's house, the younger one, Soros Jr., for a fundraiser. George Soros' son says he's even more political than his father. Oh, goody. Elon Musk is under extreme government persecution, all kinds of things being investigated or not being given things he said he was going to be given from the government before, all of that going on for allowing free speech on Twitter. Yet George Soros is trying to influence an election through the radio waves in an action that's never been done before, that was pushed through, and he's just allowed to bypass standards and procedures. No investigation there. Soros has also been active in getting illegals fast-tracked to be able to sway the election. From Headline USA, Soros used one of his networks of leftist organizations to naturalize immigrants in America so they would be able to vote for Kamala Harris in swing states and therefore bring victory to her and defeat to the entire country. According to the news source, the National Partnership for News Americans was the primary company in that scheme. They say our network has supported the naturalization of over 250,000 U.S. citizens and has been a key driver of advocacy to make naturalization more affordable and accessible, the National Partnership for New Americans wrote. We saw plenty of election interference in 2020 through social media, but it looks like Meta's Mark Zuckerberg is trying to distance himself from that for this election. Zuck is responsible for kicking Trump off of Facebook, censoring me and so many others off of his social media outlets. And he's also responsible for donating millions and millions to get out the vote effort that, of course, favored Dems. He also played a part in all of those drop boxes, mail-in scams. But according to Business Insider, he has committed this time to not getting involved and is identifying as a libertarian. He's even called Trump up a couple times. Sorry, not buying it. He's probably just CYA in the case that Trump is able to secure a win. I mean, Trump's made it very clear that if anyone does any funny business, they'll be arrested and sent to jail. So he seems like the type that would, try and cover his bases. And with the help of RFK Jr. on his team, Trump, and the renewed calls to make America healthy again, Trump's chances are looking even better. Senator Ron Johnson held a hearing exposing America's health crisis. Watch this portion.
McDonald's French fries. In the US, there's 11 ingredients. In the UK, there's 3, and salt is optional. An ingredient called dimethylpolysiloxane is an ingredient preserved with formaldehyde, a neurotoxin, in the US version. This is used as a foaming agent so they don't have to replace the oil that often, making McDonald's more money here in the United States. But they don't do that across the pond. This is Skittles. Notice the long list of ingredient differences. 10 artificial dyes in the US version and titanium dioxide. This ingredient is banned in Europe because it can cause DNA damage. Artificial dyes are made from petroleum, and products containing these dyes require a warning label in Europe that states it may cause adverse effects on activity and detention in children. And they have been linked to cancer and disruptions in the immune system. This on the screen back here is Gatorade. In the US, they use red 40 and caramel color. In Germany, they don't. They use carrot and sweet potatoes to color their Gatorade. General Mills is definitely playing some tricks on us. They launched a new version of Trix just recently in Australia. It has no dyes. They even advertise that when the US version still does. This is why I became a food activist.
And we all need to be food activists. I feel like I'm becoming more and more of one as a mother, just recognizing the horror of the poisons that we have in our food. And this is something all Americans should care about, all should be united over. And it's actually uniting some interesting bedfellows. Good news, Trump just got a huge endorsement from the former CDC director, according to Newsweek. Robert Redfield says, to heal our children, a president must see the possible and lead our nation to act. After more than 40 years in the public health arena, it might surprise some of my colleagues to know I think President Trump chose the right man for the job, Robert Kennedy Jr. So this endorsement from the former CDC director is huge. Matt Purple is joining us to discuss all of these things and more. But first, we want to hear from the sponsors that make this show possible, allow you to hear the counter narrative.
Looking to give your wardrobe an upgrade? Well, look no further. Here at God Country & Kin, we've got you covered from head to toe, from shoulder to shoulder, and everything in between. Introducing our brand new Patriotic Collection, designed to display your patriotic spirit with a stylish look that's sure to turn heads. And the best part is, you don't have to break the bank to be your best you. Why wait? Visit us online or in-store today and elevate your style with God Country & Kin. God Country & Kin, where patriotism meets style. Shop now. Visit the Patriot TV store and look for the God Country Kin banner to find the perfect outfit, shirt, accessory, or maybe a great hat. You can totally see yourself rocking this hat. I know you can. And check out all the great stuff we've got to show your patriotism at patriot.tv. patriot.store. Click that link above that says store and join me there at the Patriot TV store.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Welcome back. I gotta say, just during the break, I received a text from a family member sending back that Newsweek article I was just talking about. Like, whoa, Newsweek is reporting that the CDC director, former CDC director, is essentially endorsing Trump because of RFK Jr. So again, this is huge, and probably yet another reason why Trump has a literal target on his back, and he's almost been killed twice already, because this is big. This is hard for them to come up against true unity against something that all people should care about. Well, that's the good news. We've seen front row seat the decline from the top, snapshots from America's crisis and glimmers of hope. That's the title of Matt Purple's new book. And he is an editor, journalist, written for The Spectator, American Conservative, National Review, Washington Examiner, and many other magazines and newspapers I've probably taken from to contribute to this show, actually. He's a native of Avon, Connecticut, and a graduate of the Catholic University of America, lives in Alexandria, Virginia with his wife, Claire, and their 2 children. So thank you, Matt, for being here.
Great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's hard to keep up with all of the chaos and all of the decline, right?
It's really difficult to get it all into 300 pages, which was a big challenge when writing this book. I felt like there's major subjects and drivers of our decline that I left out. Because, I think there's a perception, and an accurate perception, that things are not as good as they used to be. And I talk about how I'm a millennial. I grew up in the 1990s. And in the 1990s, we had a sense that things were much better. There was this almost innate sense of patriotism that a lot of us had. We felt like we were, the Cold War was over, the Berlin Wall had come down, and we were living in the most prosperous, greatest country in the history of the world. And wasn't that just incredible good fortune? And now those numbers have almost completely switched. Polls find we're bummed out, we're stressed out. A lot of people think we might soon cease to be a democracy. Young people tend not to believe in the American dream anymore. So clearly we've come a long way, right, from point A to point B. And what got me curious about this was how we got there.
What's funny, Matt, as you were talking about when you grew up, and I was thinking of early 90s, we have this hilarious, I don't know why, but we only have one home video of Christmas time. I think it was 1992. And my parents are sitting in front of the fireplace and they're saying, well, Bill Clinton was just elected to president. So, the Lord's probably coming back soon. They were so down in that video about the fact that he had been elected, and how everything was going to turn sour. And it's just oh my goodness, in hindsight, yeah, that was actually the good times. And if only they'd known things were going to get quite this bad. And so I have you for a couple of segments. So I figured we could maybe talk about the examples of decline. And then for our next segment, hopefully we can chock it full of hope and those glimmers of hope, like the other part of your book. But I want to start with asking you, as you were giving examples for your book about the decline in America, how is it for you to be collecting information while knowing that we have a legacy media, we have a government that continues to deny even the most in our face areas of decline. I mean, even now, obviously in the election year, they're saying the economy's great. Jobs have never been better. Inflation was worse under Trump. I mean, like outright lies they'll try and push. So how is it trying to write about the decline while simultaneously seeing the mainstream headlines completely contradicting what you're probably trying to point out?
Yeah, and just as kind of a sidebar, I have a chapter in the book about the legacy media, or about the media generally, and kind of exploring this question of how we went from Crossfire and debate shows, the debate shows of the early 2000s, like Hannity and Combs and so on, to today when networks like CNN are just state media. You know, how did we end up in a country with a free press? How did we end up with a lot of TV channels and newspapers that behave more like state media? I think that's a very interesting question. But the good news is, in the age of the internet, and I have very mixed feelings about the internet and the impact it's had on our political discourse and on the way that we think. But in the age of the internet, you can always find dissenting information. You know, people do have tools to get the real truth out there, to get the real news out there. And so we do know that inflation is much worse today. We do know that the prices of homes are going through the roof. We do know, despite some real obfuscation on this particular point, that crime is still up in places like Washington, D.C., Portland, Oregon, and so on. We do know about all the bad news as well. And so you have that kind of way of rerouting things around the media. And of course, if you watch the media, you would think that our only problems were, you know, the threat Donald Trump poses to our democracy and January 6th and so on. And I address some of that in the book too, but there's so much more going on than that. You know what I mean? Like there's so much more than just our political dysfunction. And I think we're in this moment of joy right now where they want everybody to be feeling joyful over the prospect of Kamala Harris. And, you know, she's a good vibe and she's brat and everything else. Taylor Swift endorsed her and all the cat ladies are rallying together. And I think that, you know, you need a way of getting the actual truth out there, which is that actually the underbelly is something much darker.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable that even Tim Walz is in a speech saying we can't take 4 more years of this because they're so trying to push this propaganda effort that like it's been Trump in charge the past 4 years. It's just wild to see. But that begs the other question is how much of a factor do you put into that we may be in our own bubble, if you will, because people like you and I, we make an effort to look at both sides. I mean, in order to critique the other side, we need to read and look at it, as well as our own. So we have, I think, a well-rounded perception of reality. But there's certain people, particularly, I think we're finding the boomer generation and above, that continue just to listen to legacy media and just may really not know about this stuff. How much do you think that plays a factor in everything?
I think it plays a factor with a lot of people because it is so easy in this day and age to get siloed off into your own little bubble. And it's not just that we seek out news that backs up what we already believe. It's also that these tools that we use, and Twitter in particular is a very good example of this, the way that they work is engineered to tell us what we want to hear, to give us stories that only reinforce our pre-existing prejudices, to not see the other side, to not gain a full view of how everything works. Because the point of these social media platforms is they want to pull you in, they want to get you angry, they want to get your dopamine up, they want to have you, you know, friending people who are like-minded. And the disruption in that business model is if you come across an idea that's inconvenient to you or a piece of news that's inconvenient to you. So we're operating in these spaces that are jerry-rigged to not give us the full story, and other consequences too. I mean, to make us hate each other, to make us think that we're alien to each other. And I think that's a major problem. And you're absolutely correct that now the traditional media are doing the same thing. You know, you see this on cable news, which is almost all, I mean, you can turn on MSNBC. It is state TV, right? It is Pravda at this point. They are never going to report any news that is bad for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And so this is a problem throughout our media, I think. And you just have to remember that you want to free your mind. You know, you want to make sure that you're not playing along with this game. And that means, like you were saying, reading outside of your comfort zone and trying to get all sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering in your research for this book, obviously you were trying to give like a bird's eye view, I imagine, of the different areas of decline that we're dealing with. We've talked about the media, the decline of media, as being one of those. Is there any one thing that you find the most concerning when it comes to the decline of our country, whether it be infrastructure, economy, morality? Like, is there anything that you find most at a fever pitch that needs to be addressed really, really soon?
I think it's the decline of our communities, right? And COVID had a major role in this because we were suddenly told we couldn't go associate with people, we couldn't visit our relatives, we couldn't go to the bar, our kids couldn't go to school. And we are by nature social animals, and not social in the kind of artificial way that the internet allows us to be, but in the real flesh and blood way. We need others. And I think we got isolated during COVID, and that has had a major effect on our psychology, on the way that we think and the way that we perceive our lives around us. It's had a major impact on those kind of middling institutions, those voluntary associations, community institutions like the Boy Scouts and churches, sports leagues, that we need in order to associate with one another. It's had a major impact on crime. There's a lot of data that suggests that crime goes up when those voluntary associations go down, when we're not interacting with one another. Major impacts on the education of our kids, of course, because the schools were literally closed down. Major impacts on the economy and business. So there's all kinds of consequences flow from this. And we should be fair, this isn't just because of the lockdowns. Our communal life has been deteriorating since probably about the 1970s. But the lockdowns were when it really came to a head. And just to give you one more example, you were talking about health before and food and so on. We saw a major spike in the heart disease rate, for example, back during the lockdowns, because suddenly your gym was closed for the sake of your health, right? It was much more difficult to do things that were active. And so I think it's that emaciation of our communities. That doesn't explain everything about our decline, but I'd say that's the most major factor that I explore in my book.
So what would you say to people that would say, well, that's why we need 15-minute cities, is we need to strengthen our communities. We need to have less travel and have everything in one little place and have people all together. So what would you say to that? Because obviously this is the World Economic Forum, like globalist narrative, is that we should just all be closer knit communities.
If everything is right there, then they can control everything, right? And that's like too far in the other direction. And honestly, that's been a major consequence too, because as those communal institutions have fallen away, government has grown bigger and the state has grown bigger. And you have the advent of these groups like the WEF, which talk about these, these absurd plans of control. And that's no coincidence. It's those voluntary associations, that community is one of the best weapons that we have against the state. It's one of the best prophylactics that we have against keeping the state too big. And so what we have in a lot of cases today are people who feel isolated and a giant government who sends them checks in the mail. I mean, that's become kind of the social contract. And so no, like the solution is not little tiny communities where they can just exert more control. The solution is for us to go out into what already exists. We have good communities, good neighborhoods in a lot of ways already. We had a good community life before everything got turned upside down. Let's try to re-engage in that. Let's try to rebuild that. Let's try to go out into that again.
So ultimately, I mean, you contribute to a lot of actual trusted news organizations, not the Trusted News Initiative, which is opposite of what we can trust. What drove you to write this book?
It started from a personal place. I was curious about this mood that we had in the 90s, which was so optimistic, and then the exact opposite that we have today. I was curious about how everything could change so drastically in the course of just about 20, 25 years. And I was also, and this was something that my publisher was interested in. They were curious about a book on decline. And my stipulation was, if I'm going to do this, I want to make it lighthearted and funny. I mean, my readers can judge if the funny thing worked out, but I wanted to be lighthearted about it because decline is depressing. right? There's a lot of really depressing stuff that you and I are talking about just in this interview. And writing is not my full-time job. It's something I do on the side. So I wanted to make sure I kind of came at it from a more joyful, to borrow a word, point of view. And so it's not, it's not a work of doom and gloom. It's not some giant data dump of here's just everything that's gone wrong and all the numbers that you need to back it up. It's, there's a little bit of storytelling in there, a little bit of personal stuff, a little bit of, examining just all the nonsense in Congress that we see every day, that just can't be spectacle that goes on there. And hopefully there's some bright sides too. Hopefully there's some hope as well.
Well, I do want to turn the page. See, I got to be punny since you said, we're trying to be funny. And let's talk more about those glimmers of hope. But first, let's hear from our sponsors. And like I said, we all know the chaos and the depressing stuff. So let's try and remind ourselves of the positive things. We're going to do that after the break. But first, hear from the sponsors, and please support those that are keeping this show on the air, the Counter Narrative.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0. When I invented My Pillow, it had everything you'd ever want in a pillow. Well, now there's new technology that makes it even better. My Pillow 2.0 has my patented fill combined with a cooling fabric with temperature regulating thread. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
Now's the time to go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use the promo code to save 50% on your My Pillow 2.0. Not only that, for a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
mypillow.com. I don't know about you, but I have to have that cup of coffee in the morning. And Kingdom Cup is mold-free, it is pesticide-free, and it is organic. It's got this flavor that is delicious. You don't even have to put cream or sweetener in it.
Why did we go with the bean form, the whole bean? Because ultimately the powder form is the one that gathers the most moisture. And that means the more potential mold development. This is actually organic, mold-free, certified. That's important because ultimately people drink coffee. It's cultural. And so we tried to meet the culture where it is and create a healthy alternative.
Make the healthy choice for you and your family. Try mold-free, pesticide-free, and it's organic, delicious Kingdom Cup coffee. And it's available now at the Patriot TV store. Go to patriot.tv and click on store. You'll find Kingdom Cup coffee in the health and wellness section. Order Kingdom Cup coffee at the Patriot TV store now.
We are talking about the newest book, Decline from the Top, Snapshots from America's Crisis and Glimmers of Hope, written by Matt Purple. We'd like to welcome him right back in to continue our discussion. We were talking about the decline, which can get depressing. But let's start off with that whole concept. I think that a lot of these things are demoralizing by design. It's like I've just been really amazed, quite frankly, at how brazen the Democratic Party, this new Democratic Party, has become with their brazenness to subvert rules, laws, deny things that are common sense, like making sure that only legal citizens can vote in our elections. They're just so blatant and brazen about it. It's alarming. And I think almost part of that is to enrage us, is to get us into this like icky mindset. I was curious about if you had some of those same thoughts.
Or the lies, right? The just endless lies. I mean, Donald Trump supports a national abortion ban. Well, no, he doesn't. Donald Trump is the architect behind Project 2025, which is some dystopian blueprint for an American hellhole. No, it's not. He's disowned it how many times? One could go on. And all these are not minor things. These were talking points of Kamala Harris's in the last debate. That repeatedly went out there and were not fact-checked by the moderators. So you're right, there's like a shamelessness about it now. There's a gumption. It's kind of seen as we are at this point We cannot stand Donald Trump. We think he's an existential threat to the republic. And so we are willing to do anything and excuse anything if it means getting rid of him and if it means defeating him in this next election. Tim Walz will be catty and, call JD Vance a weirdo over and over again. They'll spread some vicious, nasty, meme lie about what he's doing with a couch. It's all shameless is really the right word for it. And I think it comes from this zero-sum idea of politics where the other side is seen as being such a threat that anything is permissible in order to crush them. And that's what you're seeing the Democrats do right now and get away with, largely because they're not being scrutinized enough on it.
And it's my understanding that you don't recognize like the spiritual element to this. I don't see how you can ignore the spiritual battle that we're in. And so how do you rectify, that so much evil is being allowed to persist, that righteous people are being persecuted and thrown in jail? I mean, it's just at an all-time high. And, we know that we serve a God that loves righteousness and justice. So, sometimes it's like, why is all of this being allowed to happen? How do you deal with that?
One thing I talk about in the book is the decline of Christianity in America. And we are secularizing at a very fast rate. Europe is always seen as being more secular, Western Europe, than the United States. We're about 10, 20 years behind them. I mean, it's coming here too. And what's amazing is how you had this brief period where the atheists had a moment and they thought, okay, we're going to liberate America from Christianity. We're going to become this rationalist atheist nation. And then within just a few years, you had this new religion, what I think of as a theology, wokeness, that came stomping in and took over a lot of the institutions that had once been mainstays of Christianity, the schools, the bourgeois, the middle and upper middle class. All of a sudden you're seeing not the Nicene Creed, but that in this house we believe, that sign outside, the woke creed in their yard. Christianity was barely out the door before the new religion came stomping in. And I think that's a major problem for us, right? Because it's a false faith. It's a false way of identifying ourselves and validating ourselves through identity. I mean, through our skin color and our ethnicity and our gender, rather than being individuals who God loves individually. So I think that is a major problem. And thankfully, there's some good work going on fighting back against the woke, but we're a long way down the rabbit hole on that stuff.
Absolutely. And so now to touch upon some of the glimmers of hope, with your book, I imagine you get some of all of the examples of the decline out of the way. What are some glimmers of hope that you can, I guess, tease for us?
There's not too many of them, unfortunately, but they are there. I mean, one that I would just point out is that it does seem like we're getting a little bit of our communal life back in the wake of COVID. The lockdowns are over. We're kind of coming out of our houses again, and the schools are going again. And there's a lot of problems there too, but we're at least seeing some relief and some recovery from what happened thanks to those lockdowns and thanks to the atomization that resulted from that. Crime is coming down, not as much as it's being made out to be. Washington, D.C., where I live, still is pretty unsafe, and there's a very high rate of carjackings, for example. But crime is coming down a little bit, so that's something that's good. That's something that we can be thankful of. I'm seeing more evidence of people who are letting go from the online world and going out into the real world again, kind of disengaging from that and realizing that this is this is just there to make me angry and there to rile me up. I can do much better work in my community on the ground. And I've come to know a lot of young people, Generation Z. I'm a millennial, so I was young once upon a time, but those days are past now. We're all like, people keep wondering, why aren't millennials going out anymore? We're in our 30s and 40s. It's just, we grew up, it's just been a while. The Zoomers are the young crowd now. And it struck me how constructive a lot of them feel. You talk to a lot of them and they want to build something. They want to create something better than the world in which they were brought up in. They never had a 1990s. They have no memory of the 1990s when things at least seemed to work. It's kind of been one thing after another, one crisis after another for them. So Is it a little too idealistic to say we should put our hope in the young? I don't know. But I think that certainly there's reason for hope there.
Yeah, I do think it instills resiliency, although being my oldest is 17. And, when Trump was shot at the first time, I just remember her sending me a text that said, "I'm just so tired of living through these historical moments," because here she has like lived through, and it was just like, so like, wow, you have been through a lot at 17, going through a pandemic that upended like school and all of these moves. And then, my career changes because of, I couldn't stay in the system of traditional media with what it had become. And then all culminating in a presidential candidate being shot in the head. I mean, it got his ear, but he within millimeters of seeing a president's head blown off. I mean, this is their life. I mean, and it's sometimes you have to take a step back in our generation to appreciate like what these younger folks have already been through. But like, my hope is that it will instill some resiliency and some thought about like, wow, why am I going through all these things in my life that like we need to change? That is, the hope. But on that note, I'm reminded of, since we just remembered September 11th, here we are in September. Every year I think about what that was like. That was like a big defining moment, like I think in our generation. And although I can look back on it and be like, oh, well, that was like the beginning of the end as far as like, Patriot Act and like all of that, a lot of our freedoms being taken away from that incident. The other thing that sticks out to me about that is I remember this feeling of unity during that time. And I remember a return to God in a big way. It was just kind of like just a couple years after that, I think The Passion of the Christ came out. A lot of people were thinking on a spiritual level in that time period. And so do you think that we're any closer with all of these crazy things going on to a potential revival or getting back to that unity?
It's hard to say. I just want to jump back to a great point that you made there earlier, because it is so weird to think that what separates two radically different timelines of American history is like a quarter of an inch of Donald Trump's ear, right? Like had that bullet been that much closer to the right-hand side, we don't know what would have happened. It would have been unthinkable. And I think after that event, there was a sense of that gravity, of that enormous seriousness. And then it happened the second time. You had the incident on the golf course back, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And it was once again on a Sunday. Both of these attempts happened on a Sunday. And I was watching the NFL games, and I had my phone charging in the other room. And they didn't even interrupt the NFL to mention what had happened. And I didn't know about it until later that evening when I went in my room and looked at my phone, and I was like, oh my God, Donald Trump was almost shot again. It's the banality of political violence. It's the fact that we're becoming accustomed to this. Our politics is so insane, and there are so many people who see him as a threat to democracy that this is just repeatedly happening now. Not a good place. Definitely not a good place to be. As for a revival, I'm not sure. I see it on the political right. There's been a coming back to Christianity, I think, among conservatives, and that's a good thing. Less so among the nation as a whole. For the most part, the numbers have found that people are continuing to walk away from Christianity. And again, that kind of leads us into that wilderness. Is it going to be wokeness? Is it going to be something else? What is going to take its place? I wish I could give you some good news on that front. I'm not seeing it right now. I think there is a very real spiritual longing among a lot of people, like your 17-year-old, for something like religion or like spirituality. So maybe that will eventually lead them back. We'll see. But I think that's something that's still up in the air.
Right. Okay. And speaking of glimmers of hope, though, I did cover this latest endorsement from the former CDC director of Donald Trump, something I definitely didn't see coming. And then even for Newsweek to cover it, I mean, it's just kind of like, oh, wow. So, I mean, the glimmer of hope that I see is that at least we are seeing some unity on the right in terms of Democrats that are willing to be like, yeah, this is too crazy. I'm just going to stand up for freedom and liberty above all else. And, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., and others signing on, Elon Musk. So that gives me hope that they have gotten too crazy. The left has gotten too crazy, and there's people that are coming along. Is that something that also gives you some hope?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much hope it gives me because Kamala is ahead in the polls right now, but they are marginalizing themselves, right? I mean, at the Democratic National Convention, they were offering attendees free vasectomies and abortions, and it's like, if the Democrats want to remove themselves from the gene pool, then that's fine by me. If they think that's like a brilliant political strategy, go right ahead. But what a weird thing to do. What a weird thing to put on. And they're just allowing themselves to be pushed into that left-wing corner by Trump, I guess, or by the fact that they hate him so much. And I think that if people are looking under that hood and seeing this stuff, they're going to be turned off. The question is whether or not they are.
Now, you mentioned the polls. We've already covered extensively how much they've gaslit us and flat out lied to us about everything else. How much stock are you really putting in these polls that they're putting out?
I don't know, because first of all, most people are not paying attention yet, right? The American voter is a pretty normal guy, and he thinks about politics in October, which is why you have October surprises in politics, because the strategists know that's when candidates are going to be at their most vulnerable. So you have all these polls they're calling up swing voters in Pennsylvania, most of whom just are not there yet and are maybe saying, okay, well, I'm interested in Kamala Harris, I guess I'll say her, but there's still a lot of uncertainty right now. That's just how politics works. We are very divided. We are very polarized. I think some of that can throw off the pollsters. It's also, you may have something like the shy Trump voter phenomenon that you had back in 2016, where you have people who don't want to admit to their neighbors that they're voting for Trump, or who are kind of reluctantly voting for him. They don't want to say it yet, but ultimately they're going to come home to him. But I think that the most important issue to people right now is inflation in the economy, and poll after poll has borne that out. And all Donald Trump has to say is things were better, prices were lower. A box of Cheez-Its at the grocery store was more affordable back when I was in power. That's going to be a powerful thing, I think, and it's going to be very tough for the Democrats to get around.
Although he might want to use a different example than Cheez-Its, because RFK Jr. might be like, no, don't say Cheez-Its. There's too much poison in there.
Personally, but yeah. And salty McDonald's fries, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm definitely behind the freedom to make poor choices when it comes to food. Like, we don't want to go the pendulum whole thing. Like, we don't want to go the way of like Michelle Obama not allowing kids to have anything fun in their lunches. I remember that initiative. So yeah, we want to obviously preserve freedom, but make responsible choices here to protect our American citizens. So all being said, so you have this book out. What would you tell people as far as like encouraging them to read it? What are they going to take away from it?
What I hope they'll take away is recognition of something that's around them. This is not, it's not, I'm not sure there's anything in here that's going to absolutely club people over the head and they're going to go, wow, there was this whole thing going on in the background that I didn't know about. What I'm trying to do is more capture where we all know our country is right now, where the trends that we see around us, the dark forces that we see around us, and capture them and put them into words and find stories and find even a little data that back them up. Talk about some of my personal experiences with that and have a little bit of a laugh at some of the stuff that's going on. So I would hope that people would find in it recognition and a sense that this bummed out sense that they have about their country and the decline, they're not alone. There's a lot of people who are perceiving this right now. And maybe it is possible that we could come back from this. who knows? Stranger things have happened. One of the great things about living in a free society is that we are free to improve. We're free to try to make things better and to correct for our mistakes. So I'm hoping that's what we can do. And I'm hoping that my son right now is only 3 years old. It's my profound hope that he grows up in a better America than the one that I encountered when I graduated from college. So that's fingers crossed. That's my hope.
Yes, I share that hope for my children. Oldest is 17, the youngest is 10 months. So quite the divide there, and I hope, obviously, as any parent does, the best for them. But best place to pick this up, Amazon?
Amazon.com, you can pick it up there, and or should be going into bookstores soon, so you can get it there too.
Awesome. Well, it was a lovely conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming on. And folks, go get the book. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, another quick break to hear from our sponsors that make this show possible. And when I return, I'll have the scripture of the day because, we talk about glimmers of hope. Well, we have ultimate hope in our Lord Jesus Christ and our Savior. And so always want to make sure that we're ending on that note. But quick break. I'll be right back to wrap things up on the other side.
Have a new product or idea, whether it's already in production or just a concept. Whether you're an individual, a small business, or a medium-sized company, our upcoming show on Patriot TV is here to showcase it to millions and launch it in a big way. We're looking for businesses like yours to feature your product on our new show and pitch it to over 6 million followers, eager to support like-minded businesses. Whether it's a single product or a new product line, we have a platform to skyrocket sales. With powerful Patriot TV ads, targeted direct mail, and the influence of our dynamic show hosts, your product will get the attention it deserves. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Email us now at advertise@patriot.tv to secure your spot and watch your sales take off. The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to the Patriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House, and the Donor Deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to the Patriot.tv store and get your Donor Deck now. Don't let them win. Patriot TV is committed to delivering the truth. America's new network for patriots is growing fast, and we'd love you to join us as a member of Patriot TV. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver unbiased reporting, thought-provoking discussions, and insights you won't find anywhere else. From in-depth interviews to behind-the-scenes footage, Patriot TV brings you closer to the voices shaping our nation's future. Whether it's political developments, cultural shifts, or global affairs, Patriot TV keeps you informed and empowered. As a member of Patriot TV, you'll get perks like personal invitations to exclusive Patriot TV events, where you can gather and network with like-minded Americans. We'll also host online events throughout the year with General Flynn, who's committed to host live Q&A webinars where callers like you can ask him questions and get real answers. Access to these events will be members only, so go to Patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. We have a great membership option starting at just $9.99 a month, or save with our annual membership for only $99, or take advantage of the best value, the 2-year membership for just $159. Go to Patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. Do your part to make sure the truth gets out to all patriots and help ensure future programming. Become a member today. Just go to Patriot.tv, click on Become a Member, join today.
Welcome back. As you saw in the commercial, they have just released that donor deck. I want to make sure that you get yourself a donor deck. You know, this is one of the most consequential elections ever. I'm sure you've heard that a million times. So it's going to be important to have keepsakes like that challenge coin. And the deck is hilarious. It's got Jack Smith as a joker. It's got Biden as a joker. So really loving my deck. You know, my husband likes to collect like old Kennedy stuff from the Kennedy election days. And we were in an antique store and there was like a whole like little section, and it just had me thinking like, yeah, I got to really save all of this stuff from this election because it may end up in an antique store worth some money for my kids someday. So make sure you get a hold of your own donor deck. You're going to absolutely love it. It's really great. And also, while you're there on patriot.tv, you can always click on my picture. If you go to patriot.tv, you can see a picture of the show. Just click on that. That will bring you to my page directly. You can see all of the archived shows. While you're there, you can become a member. And I have a coupon code for you. Use promo code KL. Use promo code KL, and you can get the subscription for even less money. Now that subscription is going to be so awesome for members only discounts in the patriot.tv store, member only discount on, you know, maybe the donor deck or other things in the patriot.tv store. You're also going to get exclusive access to events like, you know, there was just one with General Flynn. Now I have one coming up. You can ask me absolutely anything. We can have a personal conversation, just you and me. You can send in your questions or while I'm on there live, be asking your questions. That's going to be on October 2nd, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So hopefully you will show up, have a conversation with me, ask me anything. Would sure love to connect with you. That's one thing I miss about some other things that I did is getting to really connect with you. So please make plans to do that. Want to remind you, there's other ways you can support my work. You can go to patriotswitch.com, patriotswitch.com/Kristi Leigh TV, or choose my name, Kristi Leigh, from the drop-down menu, and join with over 2 million other monthly shoppers that have just switched over some of their grocery budget to a patriot-loving company. They're getting non-toxic cleaning supplies and toothpaste and so much more. Just so quit giving your money to like Procter and Gamble, all these things that like support the killing of the babies, the woke agenda. Stop it. Stop giving them your money. Switch it over to a grocery company that will support the causes that we care about. And it also helps support the show. So again, patriotswitch.com. Choose Kristi Leigh, or you can just go to patriotswitch.com/Kristi Leigh TV to do that. Most of my sponsors that I have chosen to partner with are at getwellwithkl.com. That's getwellwithkl.com. And you can check out other companies that I believe in and use myself because that is what I work with. All right. So the scripture of the day is from 1 Peter 5:6. Here it is. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. I think we've all been through humbling experiences through the pandemic, and hasn't been easy, but we need to embrace these moments because he will lift us up in due time, as his word says in 1 Peter 5:6. If you want to dive into God's word with me, then you can always join me on Locals. Search for me on Locals, and you're going to get to be a part of my daily devotional show, 7:30 Eastern time. Just wake up and I hop on and we pray together. We support each other. We dive into God's word together. And so if you want to be a part of that, check it out. Helps also support my work. But if you want to be part of it and don't have the $5 a month, then let me know and I will gift you the subscription so that you can be part of our little Bible study. Well, I just want to go ahead and end on what I thought was a really compelling testimony from a woman whose mother was killed by a Haitian. You know, she has to endure hearing if you have any issues with a bunch of foreigners entering a town, not knowing your customs, not knowing how to drive, that's supposedly racist. But she has a compelling testimony of, you know, the reality of the situation. So we're going to close out with that today. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye. We'll play that as much as we have time for. Thank you again for watching, and don't forget to share the counter narrative.
Now I'm on the right side.
I'm a Baldwin County resident. My mother-in-law was recently killed in a tragic automobile accident in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This was in June 2022. She was not distracted. She was not on her phone. She was driving under the speed limit, seatbelt buckled, several car distances away, most likely with her hands at 10 and 2. She was as cautious and careful and law-abiding as they come. Born and raised in that area, she served at the local school for over 20 years, volunteered relentlessly at her church. She loved her community dearly and devoted her life to it in many ways. As she drove to pick up cabinet hardware to complete the dream kitchen she had worked on and waited 25 years for, her car rapidly approached a vehicle in front of her on US 131. She slowed and brought her vehicle to a complete stop as she realized that car in front of her was actually in reverse on the interstate. Though she saw him, though she controlled her own vehicle, another vehicle behind her didn't have the time or luxury of stopping. This woman was 37 years old in the car behind her. My mother-in-law was hit from the rear at full speed of 77 miles per hour by another innocent woman. Then her car imploded into the driver in front. They were both killed in the accident. Both Christians, both community servants, one a teacher, one a nurse, one single mother of 2 young children, now being raised without parents. The driver of the initial vehicle in reverse was a Haitian immigrant named Antoine Azard. He was the only driver that day to survive. He didn't speak English, so at the scene of the crime, there were dozens of police officers, state and local. He couldn't speak English to describe the account of the accident. It's taken 2.5 years for the trial. He was finally charged with 2 counts of reckless driving causing death. It's not fun to be here. It seems slightly terrifying to be here, to highlight our thoughts in a space of contentious debate and place ourselves on the chopping block of public conversation and strong opinion, especially in a small town like Fairhope. But as I grow older and my children grow older, I start to recognize the politics and policies around the world and how it affects everything around us. I feel it's more than wrong to sit back and complain rather than to rise up and speak out. I'm a mother, a Christian,